Alldus podcast is brought to you by Alldus International, supplying your expert AI and digital transformation staffing needs across the US and Europe. Today, you are listening to our AI in Action series, where leading minds in AI from across the world share their story, success, and advice. AI in Action cuts through the hype and explores the true impact of artificial intelligence in our world today.
You're listening to AI in Action. I'm your host, JP Valentine. Our guest today is Dave DeCaprio. Dave is the Chief Technology Officer at mbue. Dave, welcome to the show.
Thanks. Great to be here.
Dave, let's start with yourself, please, as we do with all of our guests. Could you give us an overview of your background in technology, from where you got started, some of the roles you've held along the way, and what's led you to where you are today as the CTO for mbue?
Got started in my undergrad at MIT in computer science and electrical engineering. That was in the mid 90s, so right at the beginning of the big internet boom. Did a couple startups then that were successful, did some things, but really got into the sort of AI and machine learning area that's been the arc of most of my career in 2001 when I got an opportunity to work on the Human Genome Project at MIT. That was super exciting. I was part of the sequencing of the human genome. My job there was to take all of the new genome sequences and map all known biology onto that. And that was using a bunch of brand new, we called them pattern detection techniques back then. It wasn't machine learning or AI. It didn't have any marketing behind it, but I got my start there. From there, I've worked in a bunch of different industries, all really applying machine learning and other kind of advanced techniques, trying to bring them from research labs into industry. So did that in pharmaceuticals, healthcare for a long time. I founded a company called ClosedLoop.ai in 2017. That was a healthcare machine learning platform. Grew Closed Loop. We raised over 45 million in venture funding over the 6-7 years that I was there. In 2021, we won a $1 million AI competition sponsored by CMS. So it was the CMS AI Health Outcomes Challenge. And it was the largest healthcare AI competition ever held at that time. There was like 300 teams that entered. It was IBM, Watson, Merck, the Mayo Clinic, and this little tiny startup out of Austin called ClosedLoop, and we ended up winning the whole thing. So that was a really fun experience. That led me to mbue currently, where I'm at, which is transitioning out of healthcare and into AI for architecture, engineering, and construction. So some really interesting problems there. And in mbue, we're automating the quality control process for architecture and construction projects with the goal of reducing costs and eliminating errors and really speeding the overall time to get designs coordinated and built.
Dave, thank you for that overview. Super helpful. Appreciate you walking us through your journey and your prior experience with ClosedLoop, who is also a former podcast guest. I had one of your colleagues from ClosedLoop on the show shortly after you guys had won that incredible CMS project. Good to get you on finally. But as you mentioned, you find yourself now at mbue, one of the founding members, and you're targeting the architecture construction space utilizing AI. So I want to define the problem that you're tackling in a bit more detail, just to help the audience understand the before and the now and the future of it all. So could you just help lay out the goal at mbue? What's the detail of the problem you're trying to solve? Talk to us about your possible customers, and most importantly, most exciting of all, what you're building, how AI is solving that problem.
There's a ton of applicability for AI and architecture and engineering construction in a lot of different areas. What we're really focused on is quality control in the upfront design, development, pre-construction process. So as an architect is making drawings, things are getting sent out to bid, that whole process for commercial construction projects. So we're not talking about building a single family house here or something where you can work with an architect and a builder directly. But if you're building a hospital or a 20-story high-rise office building, there is a lot of work and coordination that needs to happen. To give you a rough idea, that it is not unusual for a set of blueprints to be 600 or 700 pages, and for that to be accompanied by 3,000 or 4,000 pages of specifications on every single detail that needs to happen in the project. So you can imagine, just with that volume of information and the number of different groups working together, you've got an owner, you've got an architect, designers, builders, engineers, subcontractors, all these different groups. And as all the details are getting filled out for these projects, there's just many different moving parts, and tracking are all of those different pieces coordinated and correct is a very difficult and very manual process right now. An architect may make a change that has to be understood by the builder. They have to price it out. They have to get it out to their subs. And mbue is building tools to improve the change control and quality control process at each of these steps. When an architect makes a change, making it easier for the general contractor and subs to identify those things. So we will highlight all of the changes in that 500-page set of drawings and summarize them for the contractor so they can go through and quickly understand what the impact is for their project. And also understand inconsistencies within a document. So if you have a bathroom and you move maybe a sink over to the left, you have to move the sink, you have to move the drain, you have to move the supply lines, you have to move the light that's above the sink to be moved. All of those changes are actually done by different groups using different specialties, but they all need to be coordinated. And so AI can help find the inconsistencies when maybe the plumbing is moved, but the associated electrical hasn't moved, and being able to highlight that and ultimately line those things up. So that's at a high level the real problem we're solving, and it has value. Our initial target market is the general contractors, the builders, because they're the largest player in the space. But really, everybody benefits: the owners, the architects, the subcontractors. There's all kinds of opportunities as we expand.
Yeah, and this industry has a massive market cap. And when you think of industries who are leaning into AI to improve efficiency, productivity, construction is one that seems like it's now finally ready for the introduction of advanced technology. In previous episodes that we've done with another firm operating in this space, they talked about some of the main challenges that exist within construction is a very high percentage of projects going over budget and going over target deadline. What you're talking about with mbue is going to directly counter that and can save millions and millions on projects. I want to spend a little bit of time now talking about what's going on behind the scenes. You're working obviously with your team to build a first iteration of the platform. What interaction are you having with your target markets? Are you having conversations with existing construction organizations? And are there any recent examples that you can share with us of how this is being deployed and already having some success?
We are early, but have a bunch of different customers that we're working with as early adopters. And those have been essential because these are not the easiest documents to find on the internet, and they're complicated. So just getting access to all of the data we need in order to really to tackle these problems, it's been important to be closely aligned with our customers, and also understanding sort of what are the most important problems to be solved by them. There are many things you can do with these documents. And so really being focused on what are the things that are going to move the needle for the customers and cut out the most manual work is where we've been aligned. It's interesting, a lot of the problems we found, some of this is finding the needle in the haystack. So we have an example with one customer where a single character changed in the model number of a particular HVAC unit that was a $50,000 change. One character buried somewhere in the middle of a 4,000-page spec. We were able to isolate that, locate it, highlight the change, and then allow the electrical contractor to submit a change order for that. If they hadn't detected that, they would have been on the hook for that because the product had already been bid and they could have missed it, and that would have been a fight or lost profits or a liability discussion. And those are the kinds of things every single project has things on that level and sometimes they're very simple, sometimes they're a little bit more subtle, but anything you can catch early in the process and allow it to go through the bidding process instead of coming in later as a change order, somebody having to eat, can save a lot of money and a lot of time.
I want to speak a little bit about your experience in shifting industry, because going into this space is quite a step away from where you've spent a lot of time, obviously, in the healthcare world. What led you to choosing to take such a step change in industry focus, and what have you learned from that change? When you speak to an audience of people who are curious and interested around what it takes to switch industry, how you do it effectively, what to avoid, what to be aware of, what has your experience been?
It's interesting. I've switched industries, but one of the way I look at my career is that I've always been vertically focused on solving particular challenges using core technology. And I've done that in healthcare. I've also done that in finance and precision agriculture and social media advertising, many different areas. And so I think there's a few core principles I've learned about what are the right things to tackle in an industry specific company versus what are the right things to tackle as a horizontal technology company. And it's important, I think, if you're going into a company that's specific to an industry to think about what technology should I be building? What technology should I be leveraging from other existing organizations? And how should I be building things? And I think that's some of the experience I've brought from having worked in healthcare is knowing what kinds of problems are appropriate for an architecture and engineering focused AI company to solve. For example, core document question and answering. OpenAI and a ton of companies are going to be really good at just basic document Q&A. That's not a technology that you want to solve in an architecture specific way. When I look at the drawings that we're using in architecture, they're super complicated and very specialized, and none of the standard vision models do very well at all on those models. And so there is an opportunity to focus on, hey, here's a unique data set we have in this industry, which is these very complicated large-scale drawings. Let me focus on that and our technology development there. And then when we have to do things that are more basic document related, let me use more generic off-the-shelf technology that's been built by companies who are doing horizontal things that have been used a ton. I think that experience of what are the right things to solve in a company focused on an industry vertical versus the things that should be solved by generic technology companies is really important. The trade-off is that when you're industry specific, you can build solutions that are completely tailored to your customers. They solve very important problems and they're willing to pay a lot. You get very high value per seat because you're solving a very important problem. The flip side is, of course, when you focus on an industry, your market is smaller. And so you need to make sure you're doing something that is a significant enough problem that you can still have a good market, even when there's a smaller potential addressable market. And so thinking about how to structure those things are primarily what I think about as I switch industries. The details of it are very different. And you also have to just be excited to learn a whole new industry and learn a bunch of new stuff every time. But probably anybody in technology who's been there a while is probably pretty excited about learning new things.
You are listening to the Alldus podcast. When you're looking to scale your team, or if you are interested in showcasing your company in a future episode, reach out today. Or if you're in the market for a new role, visit our website to view open positions, www.alldus.com.
Looking ahead, particularly the next 18 months to 2 years, when you look at what's possible, the rate of iteration and advancement in AI and possible use case applications for this sector, not a new sector by any stretch, but certainly one that's ripe for disruption with the type of technology that mbue is creating. What are you and the team hoping to accomplish over the next 2 years? What's exciting you about the journey ahead?
Yeah, really what's exciting for us is basically looking at all of the different kinds of errors and omissions that occur throughout the construction process. And there are so many things that are done by detailed manual inspection right now. And we just look at the ability to smooth over all of that and actually have architects and builders focus on the real value add activities that they do. I'm not a big believer that generative AI is going to replace the creative aspects of architects and the understanding of human spaces that they have. And we're really excited for architects to be able to focus on those details and not the minutia of some particular window glazing on the 30th floor of some office building and whether it meets the specs required that they've set out. Hopefully we can automate a lot of that capability so they can focus on the things they really enjoy. And I think when you look at the amount of manual labor that's gone into this sort of quality control process, it's very large, and it's the kind of thing that today's AI technology can do. In some ways, these tasks are pretty standardized, but the particular details, the document formats, they all look a little bit different every time. And the sheer scope of all the different kinds of documents and the details have made it difficult to automate these kinds of things in the past. You need the technology like what's available today, but now it's solvable. Now you've got things that are within the reach of what people can do. And it's really about taking these technologies and packaging them up in a way that works in the specific workflows of architecture and construction, understanding what the construction process is and who needs what service at what time. And I think that's going to be some of the really interesting things, is to figure out exactly what are the right ways to package this technology into compelling products in the next 2 years.
Speaking to an audience of AI professionals, some of which potential future employees, as you've launched mbue with a clear mission, you're talking about what's possible. When you've been speaking to your partners and some of the early employees about what you're building at mbue, what is it that you tell them about the company, the team, the mission, the opportunity, and the technology that has got them excited enough to join mbue over some of the other great companies also trying to attract this top level AI talent?
Yeah, I try to show them more than tell them. One of the interesting things, because we work on drawings, a lot of what we do is highly visual. So when I'm recruiting, especially tech talent, showing people how interesting the tech problems we are solving are, and how the technology of today, there's so many things about today's models that work very well that just don't quite work when you bring them into this industry. And so the opportunity to just really do some work that makes a difference and has a immediate, tangible, highly visual aspect to it is really nice. It's very easy to tell when this stuff works and it doesn't. And the feedback is very quick. That has been one thing that's been very exciting about working in mbue, is the ability to, when you bring somebody in technical, even if they don't understand architecture and construction, we can show them what the technology is doing very quickly and they can get it. We can also lay out the path of, hey, we are just at the very tip of what everything can do. And so there's so many more opportunities we have for what we can do. We're just at the ability right now to be able to identify all the changes. But really, when you start to say, oh, okay, I can not just find and summarize the changes, but I can start to propose fixes, and I can start to implement those fixes and have more agent-like behavior that's actually going in and not just identifying problems, but actually fixing them. There's a ton of exciting stuff there that I think, yeah, it's not too hard to get people excited about that. And you can go to big companies and get trapped in a very small box, optimizing one little tiny specific model and not really getting able to look at the big picture. And there's other places where you can go where they may be small, but they don't actually, it's hard for a small company to figure out the right angle to apply this technology where you're not going to just get stomped by a big company when they come out with a better model. It's one of the interesting things about mbue is I'm not worried about OpenAI suddenly making a huge move in architecture, engineering, and construction. I'm not worried about those models suddenly solving all of the problems we're facing. So there's a lot of interesting problems we have, and there are also ones that are going to be solved by smaller companies, not by bigger companies.
I love that. Final question from me then, Dave. Speaking to an audience of potential future colleagues, where do you see the opportunity over the next 12 to 24 months to add to your already talented team? What positions do you anticipate needing to hire for in the future?
We actually always have need on the product side for people who understand the architecture and construction industry as well as technology. I think that's something that we're always looking for, and is tricky to find. There's a smaller pool of those. And then just core machine learning and AI talent. Computer vision is a big part of what we do. I know a lot of people today associate AI with sort of pure LLMs or maybe some image generation, but we really are doing detailed visual document understanding. And so anybody with computer vision backgrounds is very interesting to us, as well as application development full stack. It's really important to be able to figure out how to take these AI applications and these AI models and get them into fully useful applications that have user interfaces that are slick and that have good workflow in them and that are beautiful and that really delight the customers that we have. We need to do all those things as we go forward, so we'll need all of those people.
Dave, thank you so much for coming on today and talking to us. It was an absolute pleasure. I've known about you for a while from your time at ClosedLoop, and I was very much looking forward to hearing about this new venture, and it hasn't disappointed. So we appreciate the insight into what you're building at mbue and the potential use cases for a massive industry. And we wish you and the team the very best of luck in the near-term roadmap. So thank you so much.
Thank you. It's been great getting a chance to talk.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Alldus podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review. We are available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and any Android podcast of choice. You can also head over to our website, www.alldus.com, to listen to more podcasts, view our open roles, and stay up to date with industry news. Thanks for listening, and stay tuned for more great episodes coming very soon.